The new model for the security, cloud security essentials training course, the new model is the cloud application security. Cloud application security, it is a very important model. It is very important module, sorry. It's very important module. And I really appreciate your concentration here, because unfortunately, people, they don't understand this in proper way. Usually when we are speaking about security, they will think about firewalls, IPS, VPN, anti-malware, antivirus, backdoors, attacks, and all this stuff. And all these attacks, it's related to network. It's related into the network. But we still have a lot of security threats related to the application itself. We have a lot of security threats related to the application, and we have to understand these security threats, and we have to harden our applications. Cloud deployment basics. Of course, in the cloud development applications, it will be a little bit different than the data center or on-prem development. On-prem development, we don't have any restrictions. Use whatever, even if you use very old programming language, but you are familiar with it and you are able to provide support for it, it will be great. We don't have any problem with it. It will be great for us, and I can accept it, and everything, it will be run fine. But for the cloud, the situation, it's totally different. In the cloud, you'll find that the cloud service provider, especially if you are having a PaaS service, platform as a service, they will provide you the latest applications, the latest developing application. Then, if you have some experience in some old operating system, in some developing programs or whatever, it will not be similar to the what we are saying now about the applications or the development basics for the old applications. It may be we will provide you .NET, and we will provide you some new applications which your developers are not aware about it. This, it can represent a challenge here, because of course I would not go and make a COBOL program, for example, or Fortran program over the cloud. This, it will not make any sense. Other issue for the cloud development, that the project management. Project management, people, we are familiar with the project management team or project management process, a local project management process. As we will see later, we have what we call it the development process or development cycle. In the cloud, it may be a little bit different, because there may be some differences in the application. There may be some difference in the tools and the concepts of implementation and the development and so on. And there are a lot of some differences which you have to take it in your consideration. Also, for the cloud development, you remember in yesterday when we said that the portability is very important. That the data, it should not be in appropriate, in proprietary format, because this is when you export it from one application and you try to import it to other application. If you are not using an open standard protocol or a standard protocol, you will not be able to run this application, and you may be locked in the cloud service provider because your data cannot be migrated into cloud service provider. This again, it can be due to choosing one of the applications or developing programs which are old, and it cannot support the new technologies which are used by the cloud services. Okay, what are the main common pitfalls in the cloud? First thing, portability issues, and this which we discussed right now, and we mentioned that portability is very important because portability means that you are able to migrate your services, data, applications from one cloud service provider to another, or from one deployment to another, from private to public, from public to community, from community to public, whatever, or from one cloud service provider to other. If you are having an application and this application it's running fine with the cloud service provider, and you find that the cloud service provider he is not able to achieve the service level agreement targets, then this means that you want to quit the contract and you have to move to another different server, or your business is increasing and you want to move into most sophisticated cloud service provider who are providing more features as Amazon or Google or whatever. And this means that you have to export all your data, import it into the this application, especially if you are using SaaS application. If you want to migrate your data from one cloud service provider, you are using a specific CRM and you want, for example, to move it into Salesforce CRM application. If the original cloud service provider does not support the open protocols, then this means that you are stuck and you are locked in for this cloud service provider, and you will not be able to migrate to any other application or cloud service providers. Cloud appropriateness, as we mentioned, that the cloud, my friends, it's not a forklift. It's not a forklift operation. Cloud, it is a service which it should provide you features, and it has pros and cons as well. Then, is it appropriate for my application to be moved from the data center into the cloud? Do you have any security controls, for example, in the data center, which provide additional security levels for the application, because the application it's not secure by design? Then this means that if you are able to provide these security controls to the cloud, that's fine. If I'm not, then the cloud it's not the appropriate solution. Some situation you may find that the cloud it may not be appropriate because internet it may be slow, or it may be delayed. Yani, for example, if you are saying, okay, I want to have IBT solution, as we mentioned that in cloud service provider, we are telling you we are providing XaaS. We are providing XaaS, which everything as a service. If you are providing everything as a service, okay, that's fine. I want you to provide me video conference. But video conference, if you have a delay over your network, then this means that the video conference, it will not work properly. If you have IBT, then the video, the IBT or the phone calls, it will not work properly if you have a delay over the network, and so on. Integration challenges. Again, this is a very important point. This is a very important point. Why? Because now, if you have an application, and this application, it will not work without integrated with other applications. For example, you have an application, and this application, it needs to be integrated with the email server, because this server application, it have to send confirmation email to customers. Then this means that the email service, it's a mandatory service as well with the application. And if you are not able to enable the integration between these applications, it will not work properly, and the application features it will be affected. Why? Because you know that I will not be able to provide fully integration in the cloud service provider. I don't have administrative rights. I don't have administrator password. I don't have access to logs. I don't have access to instance. I don't have access to the events and so on. Then this means that you have to work very close with the cloud service provider. He has to help you in the integration process. If he does not provide the mandatory help, which it will be required to integrate all the applications together, then you will be able to have the same features as on-prem. Then this means that the application, it will be better to be hosted in the cloud. It be data center, not to be migrated in the cloud as we and it is the cloud appropriateness. It's not to the expected level for the management and for the user as well. Then we will have the cloud challenges. Cloud challenges, cloud environment challenges, and the cloud development challenges. These challenges, which we mentioned in the cloud development, that it may use old application or developing application in the data center, but when you are migrated into the cloud infrastructure, this will be a little bit complicated because it have what we can say in your application environment, which it's up to date .NET, or we are using new technologies, we are using Python, whatever the development challenges which you can face. Also, the project management, it will be a little bit different. There will be a little bit different, and we will have a look at all these points in the next few slides. Okay, the SDLC, the Software Development Lifecycle Process. This is a very important concept, and you have to understand this very well, because it will help you to understand what is the difference between the application development in the on-prem and in the cloud. First of all, you have to understand the business requirements. Of course, business requirements, it's considered as the basics for our operation. And you will not be able to do anything until you are able to understand the business requirements. What are the business requirements? The business requirements, we want to, for example, have an application. This application, it should be able to print invoices. It should be able to be integrated with other application. It should be able to send the application in, the invoices into the customers by email. And this means that the application, it should be integrated with the cloud, integrated with the email server, and so on. Then you have to define what are the business requirements for this application. And business requirements, it will be the first thing which you have to think about it. What is the problem? Why do you need this application? Why you want to develop the application? What is the situation which you have it right now, and what will be the benefits which you will get it in the future after you develop the application? This, it will help you too much in the phases of the SDLC. In the phases of the SDLC, as you can see, that we have 6 phases. Phase number 1, requirement gathering and visibility. You have to understand what is the requirements. What are the requirements? I have specific requirements. I want to develop some specific application. This application, it will develop, or it will print the invoices. It will send the invoices by email to the user. It will keep track if the invoices are paid or not. And the information, it will be collected from the CRM. Also, the information, it will be collected from a local database which is reside in the data center, and so on. And you have to check if these things are practical or not. Is it visible? What we are saying here, it's visible, or this will say, oh no, wait, there is a problem. This CRM which we are using, it's not, it's using proprietary format for the data. We will not be able to export it. When this option, it's not visible. When you will find from the requirement gathering and visibility phase 1 that the application, it's not possible at all, and you have to drop this option totally. And this will be very important phase to understand the requirements and check the visibility of these features. In some situation, the visibility, it may be possible, but it may be expensive. Yeah, for example, we'll say, okay, I want to have a specific application, and this application is required to be developed 10 developers and a lot of resources, which it will cost me a small fortune. Then this means that no, it will not be a good option, and it will be better to find an alternative or on-shelf application, or to minimize the requirements and expectations from this application, or to divide it into phases, whatever the option which you can reach to. Then the requirement analysis. You collect the requirements. You know that these requirements can be achievable. It can be integrated with databases in the site. It can be integrated with CRM. Then you have to check if we make analyze for these requirements, if these features are possibly it can be achieved or not. You have to make the design. Now you have the requirements, make the design. For example, the design, it will say that what we'll have here, for example, I will have 2 servers. These 2 servers to provide redundancy, and I will have a load balancer here. The load balancer, it will balance the traffic between 2 servers. I'll have 2 storage, and these 2 storage, it will be for redundancy, and it will be connected in this form. When if any device is down, the other it will take over, and so on. And this it will define what is the design and how the application it will be designed. In some situation, you will say that maybe you need a DR site. You have to define the DR requirements as well in the design, because this application is classified as a critical application for the organization, where the organization cannot survive without this application for a long time, since it's printing invoices and it will be responsible for collecting the money from the users or customers. After you make the design, you have to go to the level of the development and coding. And by the way, this phase, it is the longest phase in the SDLC. This is the longest phase in the SDLC. Testing, you have to make test for the application. There is one approach here for testing. It's very important. We have to highlight it. Usually what you will find, just say, for example, that the application, it will be divided into 3 modules, for example. And these 3 modules, each module of them, it will be provided to the 1 developer. Each module, it will be provided into developer. Then what we are saying that it will be okay that each module, it should be, after all of them, the developers are develop the modules, we will take all the modules together, integrated as one application and make the test. But this approach, it's not the outstanding approach. The outstanding approach that you have to take each module as a separate. Each module as a separate. Make your own test for each module. Each module, make your own test for it. Then after that, after you make the test for each module and you are sure that each module is working fine, then you have to do the exercise for integrating all the modules in one application and make the testing for it. This is the recommended testing method for the application. Finally, the maintenance. Because now the application, it's up and running and it's installed in the production. What is the next step? Operations. Now the operations, if there may be bugs and you need fixes, you may need to make some updates for the application. There may be additional features which require to be added, update fixes, update batches, whatever. These are the operations. And finally, after the last phase, of course, it will be the retirement. The retirement, that the application, it will be retired because it's an old, or there is no support, or the programming languages which it's used, it's an old one, it's not supported anymore, and so on. These are the phases of the SDLC. These are the phases of the SDLC. When if we think about the SDLC here and how it can be implemented for two different approaches, on-site or on cloud, you will find that these are the phases which it will define in the requirements, of course. It is very important. There will be a big difference between cloud and development and on-prem. Requirement analysis, design. Again, this will be very important for on-prem and cloud maintenance. Again, it will be important. Testing, because all this application, it's not under your control. It is, you have to connect to the cloud service provider and do the testing and do everything. And you will find, especially also the maintenance, you may find a lot of other informations which are required here to do the exercises by the users. Okay. We understood the secure software development cycle, life cycle. Now we want to apply it. We want to apply the life cycle. And there is a very important point here, my friends, and I think it will be a very important slide. And if you don't mind, I want to take the break for 10 minutes. Sorry, now I will take the break for 15 minutes for prayer. We will take a break for 15 minutes. Then we will continue this module. And this slide, it's very important. This slide, it's very important. And I want all of you to be available, please, because this we will cover the vulnerabilities in the applications and the threads. And this which I want you to understand. Okay, then we will take 15 minutes for break and the prayer, and we will come back. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Okay. Now for applying the secure software development lifecycle. And as we mentioned before, the software development lifecycle, SDLC, it is the lifecycle used for developing applications. And here we want to cover the vulnerabilities during the development, all common vulnerabilities during the development. During the development, you may have some vulnerabilities which it can consider a crisis for your application. We have an organization called OWASP. OWASP is a non-profit organization, and we are specialized in studying the web applications. And we have one of the activities that we design or define the top 10 vulnerabilities for the web applications. One of these applications is the injection, or the first vulnerability, first one, A1. These vulnerabilities are defined by numbers. A1 has highest priority, A10 the less priority. The A1, the injection. The injection, it is a vulnerability. It will happen if the application itself, it will not check the data input field. For example, you have an application, and this application you have to define, for example, username and password as credentials. Then instead of type username and password, you typed SQL command. You typed SQL command, or you typed LDAP command. Then SQL command or LDAP command. Then when this command, it will go to the server or received by the server, it will be executed. And of course, when it will be executed, it will be something strange to the application, because the application does not recognize or does not expect that there will be any command. Then we cannot understand or we cannot predict what will be the action of the application. In some situation, it can dump all its information or dump its database or dump any critical information and so on. Then it is very important that the developer, when he will develop the application, we have to make check for the data input. If we are saying that this is username and password, then it should have alphanumeric, it should have characters, special characters, okay. But when you will have any commands, it should not be allowed. Then it have to check the input. If it's matching the expected information which the application it's required, then it should be processed. Otherwise, it have to say that you have to define the proper type of information or data, or this information and data are is not accepted in this type of fields. This is the attack number one. Then you have the broken authentication. What is broken authentication? Broken authentication, this is a very simple concept. You have here a server, you have here a user. The server is connected to the user and he accesses the service. Okay, that's fine. When you will make authentication, in some situation, you may receive a token or you may receive a cookie, and this token and cookie, it may have the authentication information which it is used to authenticate yourself to the server. If the application, it will not delete this token If it will not delete this token after the connection is terminated, then this means that this token, it will be reside on the hard disk. When there is anyone who will come after that, or it may be a hacker, he will be able to log into the machine and take this token, and it will submit this token again to the server. It seems that it's authenticated, and the user or the hacker, sorry, he will take the not control, but he will be able to access the server as the user who were authenticated before. Okay? Sensitive data exposure. Sensitive data exposure, this again, other point or one of the vulnerabilities. Don't put in your code any sensitive data. Don't put in your code any sensitive data information, or don't put in your code any external entities. Yani as in A3 and A4, you will find that XML external entities. In the code, you will find some information in the code as a reference. It may be a reference to a database, a reference to a library, a reference to a process. This it's a problem, because this it will provide a hacker some information which it will be very valuable to be used against the application to be compromised. In some other situation, you will find that, for example, you entered the wrong application. It asks you for username and password. In some situation, the application, you enter username and password, and the application, it will tell you when it check wrong username or wrong password. This is not right message, because this means that you know that it is wrong password, or then this means that the username which I used, it's right, or wrong username. Then I have to choose another username which it will be acceptable. But what is the right message which the application it should send? For example, wrong credential. Please try again. Wrong credential, when you don't know what's the problem. Is it in the application itself, or it may be in the, is it in the username or password? It depends. Okay. Broken access control. Broken access control, it is something like the broken authentication, but in the broken authentication, this will be on authentication only, but the access control, it can be for authentication and authorization. Again, you are a user, he is accessing a server, he is authorized to access a specific application or data. Then there is a problem, a hacker, he was able to take control, and this it can be through a token or whatever, where this token is stored on a hard disk, and the hacker, he was able to reach to this token and you use it, then he can access the application again on behalf of the user. Security misconfiguration. This again a very important issue, and of course this you have to be very careful for it. You have to be very careful with it, because if you have some security concepts, you have to be aware about these security concepts. Unfortunately, developers, we are not security. I don't want to say security experts, because we should not be security experts, but we have to know the minimum requirements in the security application security. If you have any misconfiguration or any problem, it will be a crisis. You remember in Windows, maybe old versions, this it's not available right now, the administrator is called the administrator. When we know whatever any Windows, when you will open the username administrator, I know that. This is not right, this is misconfiguration. Why? Because you, as it's happening now, allow the user to define whatever it is, because the standard username, it will be considered as risky, because all the users know about it. Then any hacker, first thing he have to check the default one. The security administrator, he may be not professional, he will not delete the configuration, default configuration. For example, you have default configurations, or you may have default accounts, or you may have default permissions. For example, Cisco routers. In Cisco routers, what is the Cisco? Sorry, the username Cisco. then this would be considered as a misconfiguration. This considered as a misconfiguration, which you should be carefully when you work with the web application. Cross-site script. Cross-site script, it is something, the attack, it's initiated from the browser. You have a server and you have a client, he is accessing the server. The hacker is not connecting or hacking the service. No, he is connecting to the client and trying to get access to the browser, put whatever any comment or anything here, then when this data, it will be sent from the client to the server, this comment, it will be executed and automatically this, it can dump data or it can compromise the server. This, which we call it cross-site script. In secure decent serialization, we will discuss this later, using components with known vulnerabilities. Of course, this is very important. As we mentioned yesterday, and I highlight this one, whatever any software developed by persons, there will be some problems or some errors or some mistakes or whatever, or bugs in our terminology. Then whatever any component you have, you must monitor the vulnerabilities for this application or data or hardware or software or batches or operating system or whatever it is. Whatever any component has a piece of software, even if it's a switch, you will have a bug. Even if it's a normal camera, you know, a normal camera, a small camera, but this camera, it has a firmware. And this firmware, if it was exposed to a hacker, he will be able to control it. He will be able to capture the videos. He will be able to turn on the camera, and he will be able to see you while you are working or while you are recording or whatever. Then vulnerability management is very important, and you must have vulnerability management process then to discover vulnerabilities and to deal with it and upload the right patches and the fixes for it. Then you will find the last one, insufficient logging and monitor. And I think we spoke about this one. Logging is very important because this, it will provide you the information about your applications and about the accessing of the data, even if it's hacker or legitimate users. If it's a hacker, then if you will collect all these stocks in the same server, you will be able to monitor and to detect all these attacks. And this, it will be very helpful to discover these attacks and take the necessary actions to stop all these attacks. What are the cloud-specific risks? We have some specific risks related to the cloud. We discussed this yesterday, by the way. I'm quite sure that we discussed it when we said that the difference between data breaches and data loss, where the data breaches, the data is available, but it is unauthorized access. Unauthorized user, he was able to access the data. The data loss, that the data it's already lost, and this it affects the security availability. Data breach, it will affect security confidentiality. Insufficient identity access management. We spoke a lot about the identity access management for authentication, authorization, accounting, and the API, system vulnerabilities, account hijacking. I think we covered all these points. And also, if you refer to the recordings, which I sent it to you today, you will find this slide similar to this slide. We cover it in more details the last sessions. Okay, cloud software assurance and validation. How you can assure that the software on your cloud, it is secure and validated. Cloud-based functional testing. This is very important, gentlemen. There are two different types of testing. I don't know if you know about them or not. One test is called functional test. Functional test. Another one called user test. And the same concept, you will find it in VDR as well. Same concept you will find in VDR as well. What is this? The functional test, this it's a technical test. For example, I have two servers here. The application, it will be installed on two servers. I have a load balancer. The load balancer, it will load balance the traffic between two different servers. I have two storage here, and the data, it will be replicated between the two storage, and we have double leg connection to the servers. Then we have to make sure in the functional test that all these components can communicate together, we can see each other. The load balancer, it can see the servers, and the servers can see the storage, and we have to disable one of the servers, for example this one, and check if the application it will run or not. Then we have to disable the storage and check one of the storage and check if it will be able to run the application or not. And all this stuff is called as a functional test. The user test, it will be something different. The user test, it will be a normal user. He is sitting on his machine and he is trying, as we mentioned, this application which you have, it will print the invoice, it will send it to a customer, collect the data from CRM, send the customer the invoice, follow up the customer for payment. I want to do the same exercise. I want to check if it's working as a user test. I am a user. I want to go to CRM, collect the data of customer XYZ, and I have to print the invoice. I have to collect the data from the database for the invoice value. Then make sure that this is up and this is the invoice is printed. Then I send it to my email and so on. Then these are the two different types of tests which you have to take into consideration: functional test and user test. Now we have a very important slide which I want you to concentrate, if you don't mind, here to understand the differences. What is this? Here we have the different type of tests which applications should pass before announce these or before publish these applications in the environment or in the production environment. What are these services? First, dynamic application security test. Dynamic application security test, it is considered as black hat test. Black hat test, this means that a test where the one who is performing this test, he does not know or he does not have information about the application itself. He does not have any information about the application itself. He is trying to penetrate or he is trying to make test for the application, and he does not have any information about the application at all. Okay, and he is trying to do this exercise from outside the company, and this is called black hat. On the other hand, you have the static application. The static application testing, this it's called white hat. The one who is doing the test, he has full information about the environment, and it's done from inside the organization. And usually the static application, it will review the code, review the application code. In some situation applications, it may have 10,000 or maybe 1 million line of code. Then it will be very difficult to review all of it. Then what we have to do to choose a specific portion and review it to make sure that the application is developed properly and all the security controls are implemented correctly to the application development, during the application development. This is for security. You will find also penetration test. Penetration test, this it will simulate the hacker. And the target of the person who make the test to penetrate it, to penetrate the application, to cause a harm. To cause a harm, yes, yani to reach the file and delete it, for example, or whatever. This again a black hat, and it will simulate the hacker activities, And of course, for penetration testing, you must have approval from the management, written approval that we allow you to take this penetration test. Otherwise, you may find yourself in prison if you do the penetration test without the approval of the management. Vulnerability scanning, this, of course, you know about it, but this you will scan for vulnerabilities. It will be inside the office. It will be white hat. You have full details about the network, about the application, about everything, about the operating system. When you make a vulnerability scanning for the application to make sure that everything is running and running fine. Runtime application self-protection. These applications, they are smart, and they are saying that they are able to change in its code based on the attack. When if there is any attack, it will be able to change its code. You know, one of the examples is call it polymorphic virus. You know, these viruses, which it will change its code when it will have a specific pattern, and this pattern is defined in the anti-malware or anti-virus software. When the virus, it will make changes in its code. When this pattern, it will be totally different. When the antivirus, it will not be detected. The manufacturer, they have to update the new code into the application and so on. This is which we call it runtime application self-protection. Cloud application architecture. Yes, this is very important, my friends. As we mentioned, there are a lot of users or administrators, they don't understand the concept of protecting the application itself. Because during the development, you have to take in your consideration the security protection. You have to check the application, you have to check the code, you have to review the code, you have to check the input fields, you have to review the code that it does not contain any XML entities in the code, you have to check the configuration and so on. But unfortunately, these people, we are not aware about application, or usually security administrators, they may not have application background or proper application background. When they don't understand all these things and they are not able to understand it properly, then what they have to do, or in some situation, other scenario, it may be an old application and you are not able to do anything. It may be old application, and this application, it's running in your organization, and it has very important data, and the company, we don't have the budget to upgrade the application and so on. When we are keeping the old one, you are not able to do anything because you don't have the code, you don't have anything, you have the executable file, and you are not able to do anything. Then what we have to do, we have to do something called compensating controls. These compensating controls, it's network controls or even application control running on network devices, as we can see here. Firewalls. These firewalls, it will allow connection or disallow the connection to the application. And usually the application, it will, you may have your network, it's connected into two zones with the external zone. You have here DMZ zone. When even in the internal, this you can have multiple zones here. This can be considered as critical zone, for example, and you have your application in this zone to be totally isolated from the network. And you have a firewall. The firewall, there is one firewall, it will be here, another firewall here, then it will provide the mandatory protection. And in some situation, if it's next generation firewall, which it will be able to monitor the application traffic, then it will protect the application against application attacks. Web application firewalls, which we call it WAF. This we call it WAF, web application firewalls, because as we mentioned that we have some specific mandatory things. Number one, you have to check the code. Number two, you have to check the entry. Number three, the configuration, default configuration. The entry does not have any commands, LDAP or SQL commands, and so on. The web application firewalls, it will be some sort of a firewall in front of the application. It will do all these exercises in the application, even if it's not well developed, or it's an old one and it does not, we have this feature, then the web and also the XML appliances, we will do these exercises on your behalf. It will do these exercises on your behalf. The web application, it will monitor the HTML and XML. The XML appliances, also it will do the same exercise for you, and it will provide protection. Then if there is any attack coming, using whatever, any command or any SQL command or any of these commands which it can compromise the application, then these devices, it will be able to detect it and it will immediately stop. Then you will find the cryptography. I think you are aware about cryptography. You have to encrypt the data, then no one will be able to send it. Sandboxing, this is the concept where it is an isolated area. Just think about the RAM as a piece like that. This is the RAM. This is a physical RAM. And you have applications. You have 4 applications, 5 applications, whatever. We are running here. If there is any problem with one of these RAMs, or if the hacker was able to play with the RAM registers of these applications, then the overall RAM can be affected. And the memory, it can dump all its contents, where the hacker, he can expose a very, very sensitive information as key encryption keys, as tokens for authentication and authorization and so on. What is sandboxing? Sandboxing, it will take a specific area in the memory, and it will be totally isolated from the other memory. Then, and it will run whatever any application in this memory. It will be isolated, totally isolated, and we will have an application here, it will run. When if there is any, you want to test an application, you want to run this application in isolated mode because you don't have, you know, the behavior, whatever. And when there is any attack, this it will not affect the overall memory. No, this it will affect this area only. Affect this area only, and the other application, it will work properly without any infection, because this, it is isolated in this isolated area, which we call it sandbox. Application virtualization, I think we are familiar with the concept of the application virtualization. Usually application virtualization, my friends, it is similar to what we can say it, that you have one application, and this application, it can be divided into multiple instances, as what we Office 365, for example. I can use one instance, another user can use another instance, the third instance, fourth instance, and so on. This, which we call it application virtualization. Identity and access management solutions. I think we covered this now for federation, SAML, OpenID, WS federation, OpenID, authentication, SAML. We discussed this before the break, and we said that the SAML, this is considered as the standard in the market for the authentication and federation. This it's used where you can use single username and password. This username and password, it will be stored on your Active Directory or in your authentication server, and whatever any other service from outside, it can connect to the server to authenticate and authorize the user, and to allow him or the access or disallow the access. Then we have the identity provider. The identity provider, this is the components of the federation. In the federation, you have 3 components. Number one, you have the client. This is the user. Then you have the other identity provider. This is the user who is, or entity, which is provide username and password. It will be your organization, which has the username and the password stored in the Active Directory, for example. And you will have something called service provider. the third component, it's called service provider, and this service provider, it is considered for the entity which it provides the service, the entity which it will provide you the service. These are the components of the SAML and federation protocols. Single sign-on. Single sign-on, this, it means that you will have to type your username and password only once. You receive a token. Then if you want to authenticate to any other device, then this token, it will be sent to the device. The device, it will check the token. Yes, he's authenticated. Then it will allow you the access if authenticated. There may be some other methods for authorization as Kerberos, for example, but the single sign-on, it will be the same concept that the token. It will mention that you are authenticated, and this token, of course, it's controlled by time. It's valid for a specific period. When this period is expired, you have to re-authenticate again. Multi-factor authentication, 2FA and MFA, I think we discussed this and we covered it now with NT when we discussed this concept for the management plan access. Now we finished this module for the application or cloud application. Do you have any questions, my friends?